All right, let's dive right into this one. We're going to be looking at a case from 2016 that is so strange, so packed with bizarre details, it almost feels like something out of a movie. But here's the thing, it's a real account, and it's documented from multiple perspectives. It's a story that kicks off with a simple stop for a cigarette and ends with a car, well, a car in a place it physically should not be.
And that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because when rescuers finally arrived on the scene, this is the one question nobody could answer. The car was just perched on a hill, surrounded by trees and logs, with absolutely no clear path in or out. So how in the world did it get there?
These are the actual words of the woman who was inside the car. I mean, she was completely baffled. To her, it felt less like some kind of accident and more like a deliberate, impossible placement. That one sentence right there just perfectly captures the absolute strangeness of this whole thing.
To really wrap our heads around how bizarre this is, we've got to rewind the clock a bit and look at the timeline of that night. Because the mystery isn't just about where the car ended up, but also about a pretty significant chunk of missing time.
2.5 hours. That's the gap we really need to zero in on. It's a period of time that is a complete and total blank for the witness. And it's somewhere inside this window that something truly inexplicable happened. So let's lay this out. At 1 in the morning, she parks by a lake. The very last thing she remembers is lighting up her cigarette. Okay. The next thing she knows, it's around 3:30 a.m. She's not at the lake anymore. She's somewhere else entirely, totally disoriented, with her car stuck on a wooded hill. What went down in those 2.5 hours is a complete mystery.
Okay, now let's get into the really good stuff, the trail of bizarre clues left behind. When the woman called for help and her friends finally found her, the scene they discovered only made the mystery deeper. The physical evidence was just as confusing as the missing time.
So check out this collection of details. First, there was this strange, fine, almost glittery sand that was everywhere, inside and outside the vehicle. Then, the car itself was wedged so tightly between trees and logs that the doors wouldn't even open. She actually had to climb out of the window. And crucially, the car was facing the wrong way. There was no path to drive up, and even if there was one, she was pointed away from it. And this part is just wild. It perfectly shows how contradictory all the evidence was. Just think about this for a second. Her boots were completely bone dry on the outside, but her socks, which were inside the boots, were soaking wet. I mean, how does that even happen? It just defies all logic and adds this whole other layer of high strangeness to the event. So in the middle of all this confusion, a call was apparently made to one of her relatives. But the person on the other end didn't hear a clear voice asking for help. No, they described it as gurgling, as if the witness was speaking from underwater. It was just this deeply unsettling and distorted communication.
And here's the kicker. Not only was the call itself bizarre, but the woman has absolutely no memory of making it. And when she checked her phone's call log, there was no record of it ever being placed. It's like a ghost call, a piece of testimony with zero physical trace.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This whole story could be kind of easy to dismiss if it were just one person's account, but it's not. Let's bring in a second perspective, one of the men who actually came to her rescue that night. And we're not talking about just any witness here. The friend who showed up on the scene is now retired from the federal government. He's a credible observer, someone trained to assess situations logically. So his perspective is absolutely vital to understanding what really happened. His assessment was just blunt and totally clear. He had no explanation for how the car got into that position. And his words also highlight a really key fact. Getting the car down was incredibly difficult and caused a ton of damage, which makes the car's initial pristine condition even more puzzling. So let's just quickly break down his corroboration. He confirms it was in, quote, the weirdest spot. He insists there was absolutely no way to drive it there without totally wrecking it. But, and this is probably the most important part, he confirms the car was completely undamaged before the rescue. All the dents, all the scrapes, all the damage. That happened when they were physically dragging it over logs and rocks to get it back to the road. So, where does that leave us? We have a first-hand account that's just full of these bizarre details. And we have a credible second witness who backs up the most impossible parts of the story. Let's try to separate what we actually know for sure from what remains a total mystery.
Okay, so on one side, we have the facts, the missing time, the undamaged car in an impossible location, the report of that strange call, and the presence of that unusual sand. But on the other side, we have these profound, huge questions. What happened in those 2.5 hours? How did the car even get there? And where did the sand and that strange voice come from?
And just when you think this whole thing can't get any stranger, it does. When the woman reported the incident to the authorities, they told her something pretty incredible. Her bizarre night wasn't an isolated event. There had been numerous other reports of strange lights in the sky in that same area on that very same night.
Now, the witness herself never claimed to see strange lights or some kind of craft, but she did remember one final chilling detail. As she was trying to get out of her car, she glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a figure, what she described as a protector being, standing behind the vehicle. But by the time she managed to climb out the window, it was gone. And that's where we're going to leave it. The facts are pretty clear. The car was in a place it shouldn't have been, completely undamaged. The witness was missing 2.5 hours of her life. Strange phenomena were being reported all around her. It really forces us to ask a question that pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible. What kind of force could be responsible for something like this?